Lieutenant Titus predicts the Tyranid's Hive Tyrant is leading a swarm along a corridor toward the astropathic relay. We are inserting you near a bridge held by the Imperial Guard that intersects with its path. You will level the whole structure and crush that Xenos monstrosity in the collapse. Visual on drop zone. Setting down. Assist in the defense of the bridge.
Hi.
You confirm that the Xenos
Welcome back to the
has
channel.
entered the kill zone.
I am well aware of the fact that it has been a very, very long time, probably about, I want to say 4 or 5 months or so like that, and I do want to take a quick moment to go ahead and apologize for that. Admittedly, I was hoping to be able to make this video a lot earlier as kind of like a very quick follow-up to my prior video. However, a couple of circumstances and stuff kind of changed it, with the Adepticon reveals for both Warhammer and Star Wars Legion delaying all of the videos, plus a bunch of other things that came up. And admittedly, by the time that everything had finally cooled off, we had learned enough about 11th edition, the new models that were coming, and Star Wars Legion and the new Mandalorian army, and I was finally ready to sit and record all these videos. There was some personal stuff that came up that kind of dragged me away for quite a while, and for that I do apologize, because I was hoping to have made this a lot earlier, a lot quicker, and not be sitting with about like 4 or so months before the next video. So in order to kind of make up the time to get this video and the next couple of videos recorded, I'm going to be essentially doing very minimal edits. So the next 2 Warhammer videos, this one and the next one, are going to be very little editing. You're going to see gameplay in the background, and you're going to see me basically ad-lib my way through these videos. And then I'm just going to throw the audio on top of the gameplay, and bada bing bada boom, it's done. As for the Star Wars Legion one, that will take me a little bit longer, because I do kind of want to do a PowerPoint relating to Legion and some of the other stuff, but that one will basically be kind of Auspex Tactics, Legion Cantina style, where everything's just going to be PowerPoint, so I'm just going to be flicking through really fast. But with that out of the way, I want to get started on this video's topic, which is the first army I ever picked up for Warhammer. If you watched the last video at all, you know I talked about Wargaming, you know I talked about how I got really into it, I got really invested, and my wallet is currently empty as hell because of that and other factors. But kind of didn't really touch too much on it was the Dark Angels and how they became my first Warhammer army. And there is both a kind of like I wouldn't call it personal, I guess more of like a in reality kind of reason for why I ended up picking them up, and there is a in lore and in universe reason I ended up kind of picking up the Dark Angels. And obviously it's because of the fact that they are the first Legion, the first chapter, and that's it. Thank you very much for watching. No, I'm just kidding. That's not the end of the video. No, but I'm not gonna segue. I'm not gonna break this lore down into like a hour-long session. I kind of want to keep this video around 20 minutes max. So we're gonna kind of simplify a lot of this, and I'm gonna kind of heavily breeze over and poorly explain a lot of this. The first thing I want to kind of talk about is the kind of in-universe kind of lore reasoning. And legitimately, one of the reasons I ended up gravitating towards the Dark Angels as my first army, lore-wise, was simply because of the fact that I thought the color schemings were interesting. The fact that the Dark Angels are so versatile with their main force as well as their 2 veteran companies having different color schemes, that I thought that they looked really cool. And I also thought a lot of the lore for the Dark Angels was really interesting and really investing. To kind of delve into the lore super fast and kind of speed run the whole thing, the Dark Angels were the first of the Space Marines to ever be created. They have been used as the God Emperor's exterminators, and if the Emperor needed a threat eliminated, it was the Dark Angels who took care of it and made sure that there was never a trace left behind. These guys have access to all of the ancient technology that used to be during humanity's peak era of technology, known as the Dark Age of Technology. And the only reason it's called the Dark Age of Technology is because the AI revolted towards the end of it, and they had to have a whole galaxy-wide Terminator movie session. But the Dark Angels have access to all the really cool technology and weaponry that humanity used to be able to produce or had at the time. I thought that was really cool, and I think there's something really interesting to say about their whole adventures with the Fallen. Now, for kind of quick summary, Warhammer is basically all about the fact that the God Emperor shows up after a long time of humanity's history. He unites the planet. They go out to conquer the stars. Space Marines are created. The Primarchs are created. One of the Emperor's sons, which is a Primarch basically, Horus, ends up betraying the Emperor and leads half of humanity to damnation to worship Chaos, which is a bunch of demonic entities and forces. At the end of the Horus heresy, when the God Emperor and his loyal sons and forces ended up defeating Horus, the Primarch of the Dark Angels, Lionel Johnson, returns to his homeworld of Caliban, where his father figure and mentor betrays him, having fallen to temptation of Chaos because of his jealousy of the Lion. And his father figure, Luther, turns half the Legion traitor. Big fight happens, the planet's blown up, the Lion disappears, Luther is imprisoned, and the Dark Angels do not want this shame to go public at all. So, as a result, they hunt these fallen angels across space and time, and any time a fallen angel shows up, they abandon everything to ensure that the secret never gets out. I also will say I really like the iconography of the Dark Angels with the sword, with their kind of like gear-like wings. I think that's really cool. But yeah, I think also a lot of the more recent lore with how interesting Cypher has been and like what he's been up to, I really want to know that. And the return of the Primarch Lionel Johnson, who is basically the Emperor's firstborn son. And the fact that the Dark Angels have this whole kind of like, the Lion is going around redeeming those fallen who didn't really know about what was truly going on and who didn't succumb to the forces of chaos and evil. The Lion offers them a chance at redemption, and he redeems them. And personally, to me, I really like that aspect. As I was coming into the hobby, I didn't really know. Nobody really knew that the Lion was about to return at that point. There were rumors, there were supposed leaks at the time, but it was never confirmed. But I always thought at the beginning that that would have been such a cool facet, learning about the fallen angels, that I thought it would have been interesting to see like loyal fallen angels who are loyal to humanity, loyal to what's right, and they never actually were traitors. They just were led astray, you know. So it's really cool to kind of actually see the lore, and that I really wish there was more lore to played out, but all the different chapters, all the different legions, they all have different specialties, and the Dark Angel specialty is being versatile, kind of like the Ultramarines, in the sense that this group, the Dark Angels, the chapter and legion, they were the original Space Marines. They were the first ones to form, and the Dark Angels of old were the ones who not only helped refine the warfare techniques that every other legion and consequently every other chapter would come to either specialize or adopt and such, but the Dark Angels also have access to some of the most powerful hidden weaponry that the rest of the wider galaxy is not available to have. And I think that's really, really cool. Plasma weaponry is super cool in the sector. I really think that's dope. So, I guess that's kind of like most of the lore thing, especially with like the Deathwing being their veteran company that's entirely in bone armor, and their Raven Wing that is entirely made up of pure black, jet black armored veterans that are all on bikes, they're all on speeders, they're all on aircraft. I think the Raven Wing is really, really cool. And I'll be blunt, I think the Raven Wing is my favorite facet of the Dark Angels, hands down, bar none. Coolest model ever has to be a tie between the Talon Master and the Landspeeder Vengeance. I know the Dark Shroud looks kind of cool, but I'm sorry, the Landspeeder Vengeance, dope-ass Ravenwing speeder with a heavy plasma battery on the back, that's way too dope. That looks way too cool. But yeah, so I think that kind of really covers most of the lore aspects and what I really like about them. I will say, I don't really like the fact that they literally will hunt their fellow Imperium brothers. If anybody in the Imperium finds out about the Fallen, I think that's really retarded, personally. Which is kind of one of the reasons that out of all of their successors, I think the Angels of Absolution are the coolest. Because, well, one of the coolest. They're in the top three. Angels of Absolution, and I'm not getting into successors too much, but basically they, unlike the rest of the Dark Angels who kind of carry the shame as like their biggest penance they have to do everything to go out of the way, and they call themselves the Unforgiven because of it. The Angels of Absolution do not feel the shame of the Fallen's existence. They still go and hunt out the Fallen as necessary, but they don't feel like, oh, we're so ashamed that the only way we can receive penance from the God Emperor is by eliminating all the Fallen. Like, they are probably best equivalent is to call them Dark Angels without the shame. And I've heard a lot of people say that the Angels of Absolution is one of their favorite in lore chapters, and I absolutely agree. But kind of moving away from that, because otherwise we're going to get into a whole tangent about successors, and I will at some point eventually make a video talking about like, oh, what are my top 5 Dark Angel successors or whatever. Moving on. Or just successors in general. But that's kind of like the lore aspect to what I really like about the Dark Angels. And let's kind of talk about the IRL, is the best way to put it. When I first was getting into the hobby, it was at the end of 9th edition, so it was around the year of 2023, as the Arcs of Omen campaign was releasing. I didn't really know anything about wargaming, I didn't really know anything about like all these plastic miniatures and all that, and when I had found the local community, that I had met a bunch of them and started chatting with people. We talked about the fact, we talked about Warhammer, we talked about like kind of getting into it, and one facet I mentioned was that I have never really held a paintbrush or put plastic miniatures together. And at first I was admittedly eyeing up the Astra Militarum, the Imperial Guard, depending on how old you are is what you'll call them. I was kind of eyeing up the Guard because I really thought the idea of your average schmucks and joes kind of slugging it out against the horrors of humanity was a really, really cool idea. But since I had never really built any minis before, nor had I really painted anything with the paintbrush before, everyone recommended that I do actually pick up Space Marines, because you can get them on pretty good discounts. You can usually learn to paint with them pretty easily and such like that, and you get to learn every facet of the game. So I got to try out a couple of games. One guy let me his Ultramarines that we pretended were Dark Angels, and I got to play Dark Angels, and it was fun. Admittedly, the adventure of getting into Dark Angels was a lot earlier, back in college, because a friend of mine ended up running a Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition campaign that he heavily modified for Warhammer, because we didn't at the time know any Warhammer systems that existed. I had never heard of Warhammer at the time, and when he told me to just pick a chapter to join, to be part of for his Death Watch campaign, which I had no idea what any of those words meant at all, he threw me a website, and I just started clicking around, and I ended up finding Dark Angels, and I thought the little lore blurb about like the hunting the shame of the fallen, and how long they have been in service, and the really cool iconography of like the sword and the mechanized wings that I mentioned earlier. I thought that was really cool, and that kind of dragged me in. And that's what ended up causing me to play Dark Angels. And honestly, I don't really regret it one bit either way. Granted, I played that character more like a Raptor than I would have played him a Dark Angel, because he was this makes no sense lore-wise, but he was a Death Watch scout sergeant. But still, it was a lot of fun to get to play through that campaign and learn what the hell a Tyranid was, learn what a Cadian was, learn who the heck Slanesh is, and just kind of dealing with Tyranids, not knowing what the hell was going on. But it was also really enjoyable over the much later on, getting to learn like more about the Dark Angels lore, getting to learn a lot more about kind of the faction. And as I started picking up the models and painting them, conveniently the Wrath of the Soulforged King box came out, which sold Azrael, 10 Deathwing, and no, 5 Deathwing Terminators and 10 Intercessors. And that's kind of where my Warhammer journey really started for the Dark Angels. Before that, I had kind of picked up some Death Watch stuff just to play an army, kind of learn more, and ended up really with this box kind of going full send and picking up everything Dark Angels from there. And honestly, they are the only army I really have a solid foundational collection of, and I would say a decent rules understanding. Space Marines aren't usually that hard to learn and to play. You get to learn every single facet of the tabletop game as you're going through with the army. So I feel like I really have come to learn. I'm not great at the game, but I have definitely come to learn how the game plays thanks to the Dark Angels. I've really come to learn what I like and dislike about the game thanks to the help of the Dark Angels, and I really do hope one of these days in this current 11th edition that I am able to eventually build up a Ravenwing force and be able to play the company of Dark Angels that I really love the most in aesthetics and vibes, which is the Ravenwing. But yeah, I don't know, I think I'm just gonna kind of ramble for a little bit longer, but I think that's pretty much everything. Like, I've covered the in-universe lore aspect of it. I've kind of covered the in-person reality aspect. So yeah, that's why I like the Dark Angels. I mean, I could sit and joke honestly that I'd gone to the Dark Angels, like I said at the beginning, as a joke. Oh, you know, I'm the firstborn in my family. In my generation, I am like the firstborn with the first Legion, the firstborn Space Marine Legion chapter. Like, hell yeah, I'm obviously gonna. No, I'm just kidding. But nah, just with all jokes aside, whether real or not that case is, because who knows? Maybe I'm not the firstborn. Maybe I'm an only child. Maybe I have 50 brothers and sisters, and I'm the youngest. Who knows? I'm not telling you. But I will say that just kind of, I have done research into the other chapters, into a lot of the other legions, and honestly, I don't think I could really sit myself down and realistically vibe with any of the legion more than I do the Dark Angels. Especially, like, if we just go with Loyalists alone, I don't know. I will say I definitely like the Iron Hand style of having a bunch of tanks and vehicles on the board, but the lore is not my thing, not my style. White Scars with all the speeder bikes and everything is really cool, but I don't, like, you know. And then Raven Guard, obviously, with the sneaky breaky and the stealth tactics and striking for the shadows, is also really cool, but I'm not in that 5 edgy 3-me aesthetic of, like, everyone's skin is paler than, like, the moon, and their hair is jet black and everything's all goth and emo. Like, that's not for me. I really do think out of all of the legions, the Dark Angels just kind of touch on everything I do really like. They have the speeders, they have the heavy tanks and vehicles, they have the sneaky breakies and their own secrets. They can be the combined arms of the Ultramarines without being the Ultramarines that are basically just such generic poster boys and, like, have the ultimate plot armor that literally everybody hates it, you know? And I get it, not a lot of people like Dark Angels, not a lot of people like the whole thing with the Risen and the Redeemed, which are the fallen angels that are redeemed by the Lion. Not a lot of people are a big fan of the way the Dark Angels literally go out of their way to hunt the Fallen every single time there's a mention of it. It's like, oh my god, there's a Fallen brother over there, we have to go after it. Like, I don't know, sorry. That's, you know, I get it. Dark Angels are not for everybody. But I will say it's really hard for me to justify imagining to play any other Space Marine Legion or chapter that's not a successor to Dark Angels. I would love to make my own successor to Dark Angels, and I'll probably do a video on that at some point. And I realize I'm kind of just rambling at this point because I don't really know what else to ramble about. But admittedly, I'll keep it real simple. I love the Dark Angels. We talked a little bit about it, and oh, I forgot to talk about the rules. No. Okay. The rules for the tabletop change a lot, but I am gonna go ahead and kind of talk about this really quickly. I really do love the facet that the Dark Angels are more than just generic Space Marines. You really get to see the specializations of the Death Wing and the Raven Wing. The Death Wing with all of their really heavily armored guys and veterans in bone armor and such, being able to have really strong defense and holding the line and being really tough to kill, and the Raven Wing being really fast and able to zoom around the board. Uh, I'll be honest, I really love the aesthetics of the models as well, and I really love the rules for the Dark Angels. I wish that some of the rules were a little bit better, but I will say that the rules for them have also made them really enjoyable. And actually, um, 10th edition, I did really poorly. I had about a like 25% success rate with them in all the games I played. But so far with 11th edition, I have been really comfortable with Dark Angels. I have a 50% win rate, and that's only because I've played 2 games. 1 win, 1 loss. But yeah, I think that's about covers everything. Thank you guys for watching. Next video will be on the Imperial Guard. So stay safe, stay healthy, stay tactical. This is your host Slick, signing out.